The Red Sox sweep the Baltimore Orioles from the help of a great start from Nathan Eovaldi on the mound and JD Martinez coming up clutch as the offensive hero to help the Red Sox complete the sweep.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Massachusetts Pirates team insider Jake Ignaszewski, and the Red Sox are getting hot late in the season, trying to end the season on a good note after a very, very tough 2022 campaign. As you know, Lauren and I have talked about throughout this last week that the Red Sox have been officially eliminated from the playoffs. But I got to be honest with you, I went back to Fenway Park 2 nights ago for the second game of this Orioles series when Rich Hill went out there, had a great game on the mound, and the Red Sox were ultimately able to win. But it's sort of fully sunk in for me when I saw in left field on the Green Monster that the Red Sox were sitting in last place of the AL East. Now, obviously, as you guys know, I'm one of the hosts of this podcast. We recorded 5 days a week. We've been talking about how awful this season has been. You know, the standings are available for me to see on MLB.com. I knew the Red Sox were in last place, but it didn't fully sink in how bad this season has really gone until I just saw it with my own 2 eyes on the Green Monster. And it was just so tough to see. And as much as I miss the atmosphere at Fenway Park, and, you know, I wanted to go to a Red Sox home game one last time during this season to really take it all in, because I don't know about you guys, but I really start to miss it once the offseason happens. And obviously, I love the game of baseball. I love watching my favorite team, the Red Sox, especially at Fenway Park with the atmosphere. But it just wasn't the same. You know, the people around us that I was sitting with, outside of the people that I went with to the game, just the crowd, you know, you could sort of, I don't know, feel the energy that everybody in the ballpark knew that the season was coming to an end and that the Red Sox were out of it, and that they were essentially just playing to add to their win total or their loss total, and it didn't really mean anything. And you know, it was nice to obviously see the Sox get a win. Be able to see Abraham Almonte hit a home run. Tristan Cassis have a great game. Obviously, as I mentioned, Hill had a great game, but it was just the first time that it had fully sunk in how bad this team was. And it was a tough pill to swallow, but luckily we got to see a great Red Sox performance throughout this Orioles series at Fenway Park. We obviously saw them on Thursday end up completing the sweep with a 5-3 win off the help of Nathan Eovaldi on the mound. Ended up going 4 2/3, only allowing 5 hits, 2 runs, 1 that was earned, and striking out 3 batters. And this was a very critical start for Nathan Eovaldi for him to be able to build up his value and show what he could bring either to the Red Sox next season or another team next season. Obviously, as most people who listen to this podcast know, Nathan Eovaldi is a unrestricted free agent after this season. And so this honestly could have been his final start in a Red Sox uniform playing at Fenway Park. We could probably see him again before the season ends, but who knows if it'll land on when the Red Sox are playing at home. So it was nice to see him be able to come back after an injury and show they still got some in the tank, because you know we saw his rehab performance in Worcester wasn't anything to get excited about. Ended up allowing 3 earned runs over 3 innings, ended up allowing a home run to Dominic Smith. And it's never great, obviously, when a pitcher goes down for a rehab assignment. And I wouldn't say he got shelled, but he definitely didn't dominate. And, you know, obviously we saw as well, the velocity was way down. Luckily, that wasn't too much of the case during this start on Thursday afternoon. But luckily, Eovaldi at least was able to go out pitching at Fenway on the right note to help the Red Sox ultimately get the win. And it was also really nice as well to see the bullpen back him up. You know, obviously, as I mentioned, Nathan Eovaldi only went 4 2/3. So the bullpen really had to pick up the slack and be able to contain the game and not really blow it up. So then the Red Sox could still find a way to ultimately get the win, which they did. But for majority of this game, it was a tied one. And so luckily we saw Eduardo Bizzardo come out, pitch 1 1/3, walking 1, striking out 2. Matt Strahm was really the only guy out of the pen who allowed an earned run and really didn't look that great. He ended up allowing a home run to Kyle Stowers, which ultimately ended up putting the game in a little bit of a weird direction. They ended up tying it. And then obviously we saw JD Martinez come up clutch and be the hero with a 2-run home run. I'll speak about that in a tiny bit, but I wanted to focus on 2 guys in particular, Zack Kelly, who got his first major league win, and Kaleb Ort, who got his first major league save. Now, Zack Kelly, friend of the podcast, has come on during the offseason, and no promises, but we're definitely going to try and get him on during this offseason as well. But he's been one of the most impressive guys out of the bullpen for the Red Sox throughout September. And ever since he has come up to the majors in his rookie season, he's dazzled. Has only allowed earned runs in 2 of his 12 games that he's appeared in, has a 2.13 ERA so far in his young major league career. And what we've seen from him has just been very impressive for a guy who has had a long path to get to the majors and is going into his 27th age year. But he is just showing and continuing to show why he deserves a spot in this Red Sox bullpen during the 2023 season. And obviously there's going to be multiple spots available. The bullpen has been a massive issue for the Red Sox throughout the past few years, so it's definitely going to be a priority. But luckily, Zack Kelly might make Chaim Bloom's decisions a little bit easier by showing that he can be a reliable option out of the bullpen for the Red Sox for the rest of this year and for the future as well. And he's also a guy who, what we saw him do during this Orioles series was very impressive. During this game, obviously, like I mentioned, he got the win, only allowing 1 hit and striking out a batter. But also 2 days ago as well, he got out of the inning in just 9 pitches. And you never really see that from a rookie. And, looking at Kaleb Ort as well, he's another guy who's going into his rookie season. He got his first career save, only allowing 1 hit, striking out 1 in Thursday afternoon's game. But he's somebody who is another person who's trying to audition for a spot in the Red Sox bullpen for the 2023 season. Now, what we've seen from him isn't anywhere close to impressive as Zack Kelly has been performing, but Kaleb Ort, in my opinion, could be a mediocre bullpen arm for another franchise, but I don't think that it would be smart for the Red Sox to slot him anywhere in the 2023 bullpen and expect him to really be able to give you anything better than the Red Sox currently have in their farm system, or the Red Sox could go out and get in free agency. But for both of those guys, it was really nice to see them be able to get some of those firsts in their young major league careers. And both of them are in their later 20s. So just as somebody who has had the opportunity to meet both Zack Kelly and Kaleb Ort, it was a really cool moment for myself as a fan and somebody who wants to see those guys succeed throughout their major league career. But, looking at the offensive side, as I mentioned, JD Martinez was the hero for the first time in a while for this team. Martinez has been somebody he's been talked about a lot throughout, not only on this podcast, but throughout this season, is not really going anywhere close to the expectations that most people anticipated him to have the offensive production or output as fans are really used to. And this is the first season where we've seen a very low power production for JD Martinez. And one of the other components that he's really been missing in his game is being able to come up clutch with runners in scoring position. And, it always seems like if there's ducks in the pond and JD Martinez comes up, you think in your mind now, unfortunately, that he's either going to get grounded into a double play or squander a perfect opportunity for the Red Sox to get on the board. But luckily he was able to seize the moment and come up clutch 2 times throughout this game, ended up doubling, and also broke up the tied ball game with a 2-run shot, as I mentioned earlier. And over his last 7 games, we've seen him really be able to swing a lot better bat. Has 2 home runs over those 7 games with a 308 batting average. And Alex Verdugo is another guy who had a great game, ended up going 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs. And over his last 7 games, he's batting .379. And he's another candidate who could potentially get an extension during this offseason. I really think that the Chaim Bloom and the Red Sox are going to really try and lock up some of these guys for the future. That's the hope. That's the goal. That's what fans have, been screaming from the rooftops for. Start making a core of this team so fans can actually get really excited about what they're going to be turning on their TV and watching, or buying tickets to go to a game. And I think Verdugo has the best part of his production and his offensive approach as well is yet to come. A lot of people forget that this is only his second 162 game season. Multiple fans, including myself, love Alex Verdugo's personality, what he brings to this team, but just through the numbers and statistically, I just got to see more. But luckily, we're starting to see that consistency a little bit more. And then we saw Tristan Cassis also get in on the action, getting 2 hits. And he's really changed his approach, it seems like, over the last 7 games, batting .479. And he talked a little bit about that change in approach with Jemai Webster 2 days ago during their post-game interview. And he mentioned that he's being a lot more patient at the plate. And that really showed when I went to the game on Wednesday night. He ended up walking twice and also getting a single as well. But that's something that you sort of have to expect some of these younger guys, a guy like Cassis, who had a little bit of a shortened AAA stint during this season due to an ankle injury, and really hasn't been able to find his footing that great so far in the majors. But it's nice to be able to see him starting to learn how to approach some of these major league pitchers and starting to get into a groove, as we've seen him, as I mentioned, over 400, close to a 500 batting average over the last 7 games, which is just eye-popping, especially for a rookie and a guy who is as young as Tristan Cassis. But it was really nice to see the Red Sox starting to play some good baseball at the end of the season. And, it gives us fans a little bit of something to get sort of excited about. But going into our second segment of the Locked On Red Sox podcast, I wanted to talk a little bit about Sam Kennedy's conversation on the Fenway Rundown with Chris Cotillo, and give some of my thoughts on what he mentioned about a possible Red Sox, a possible All-Star game coming to Fenway Park, and what his thoughts has been of how the ownership has really approached the building of this team, and really how focused they are on this team due to their expanded portfolio. But before we talk about that, I just want to talk about BetOnline.net, which is your number one source for football betting information this season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, with live betting and up to the minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way for you to check in on all your favorite games and sporting events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. So head over to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So going into this second segment, I really found the Sam Kennedy conversation very interesting on the Fenway Rundown. And Chris Cotillo always does a great job with his podcast presented by Mass Live on being able to get some of these higher profile front office representatives or players or just guys who report on the team to give great analysis that I can use in this podcast, and to help not only myself, but fans like you guys to learn more about what is really going on internally for the Red Sox, and especially with a guy like Sam Kennedy, who's the CEO of the team and works very closely with the ownership group. It was really interesting to hear about his thoughts on Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers, re-signing, long-term players, and also a few subjects, as I mentioned in the teaser of this second segment, of the AllStar Game coming to Fenway Park. And that was something that really caught my attention, because obviously the Red Sox haven't had the opportunity to host it ever since 1999. And, even though that's the year I was born, I still know, Ted Williams got wheeled down in his wheelchair. Pedro Martinez pitched in that game. And it was an event that is very memorable for a lot of Red Sox fans. Unlike myself, who were able to experience it and really enjoy the All-Star Game being at such a historic park like Fenway. And I'm really excited for that to possibly happen once again in the next 10 to 15 years. And Kennedy actually hinted at it, that there could be a possibility of a 30-year anniversary All-Star Game at Fenway Park. He did mention that the team has put their interest and let the Major League Baseball know that they're very interested in hosting another All-Star Game. So all we can do is really cross our fingers that the Red Sox and the ownership group are really able to make that happen. I think it would be a great event, and it would bring a lot of buzz, obviously, around the Boston area. Obviously, there's just so much buzz with the Boston sports scene, but I think it would be once again a very historic event for Fenway Park. And another subject that I thought that they talked about that was very interesting was sort of the narrative that we've heard a lot of fans and maybe Boston sports personalities talk a little bit about, with the expanded portfolio of the Red Sox ownership group of Tom Warner and John Henry. And with them buying the Pittsburgh Pirates, as well as obviously having the Fenway Sports Group, which owns the Red Sox, NESN, the Boston Bruins, and as well as Liverpool, Roush Fenway Racing. And there's been a lot of people who have mentioned, maybe with how the ownership has their hands in multiple different things, they're not fully focused on the Red Sox, and that's maybe why we're seeing a lesser productive on field performance from the team over this past season. It may be not as much spending as fans would like, with extending Rafael Devers or Xander Bogaerts. And Kennedy pretty much put it as, even though the ownership group has an expanded portfolio, this is just a much better way for the ownership group to be able to invest on the on-field product, as well as continue to add to the fan experience at Fenway Park. And he mentioned that the ownership group is still obsessed with winning. And, even though that their portfolio has expanded, that they're involved in the day-to-day more than they were before. And especially with the success over the last 21 years that this ownership group has seen, he mentioned that they're very determined to be able to continue to put an on-field product that fans get excited about and that can win championships. And my main reaction to that was sort of a little bit more clarity on sort of what the mindset of this ownership group is. And obviously, hearing those comments, you can take it how you want, but from what I heard from that, their expanded portfolio is just going to help be able to give the ownership group a lot more resources and ability to be able to spend a lot more money, not only on this current Red Sox team with free agents, with extensions, but also be able to, they just built a brand new music hall right next to Fenway Park. We could see even more amenities and different things that add to the fan experience being added due to the extra revenue that the Red Sox and the Fenway Sports Management Group are able to obtain from these different things that they're invested in. But he also mentioned as well that each organization has its own management group and has its own sort of set aside revenue towards that specific organization. And so, that made me feel a lot better sort of about, the narrative that's been going around throughout this season. And, he also mentioned as well that he finds it sort of ridiculous that people think that this ownership group isn't investing or spending as much money as maybe fans would like to see them spend on this team, because it was just reported that the Red Sox have to pay the luxury tax and are really the only organization who are over the luxury tax threshold that aren't making the playoffs. And he mentioned obviously that frustrates them, and that's not where they expected to be whatsoever. But it also just points to the fact that this ownership group is very invested and willing to invest on putting a competitive on-field product. And obviously with what we see in the record, and that the Red Sox aren't going to be playing October baseball, obviously that didn't work out this past season. But Kennedy definitely spoke about a lot of confidence with the Red Sox being able to get a lot of money off of the books, that the team is going to be able to be back in that competitive threshold of the major leagues and be able to compete for a championship in World Series once again in 2023. And I found that very nice to hear as a fan, and something that gave me a little bit more confidence going into this offseason, as tough as this season has been throughout this year. But as always, we greatly appreciate all the support on this podcast. As difficult as this season has been, it's been so much fun to be able to talk about this team on a weekly basis or 5 days a week, and be able to interact with some of the audience and some of the fans of this podcast. And Lauren and I have so much fun being able to bring on these different guests and give you the best content that we can, even though the on-field product might not be what we would like to see. But as always, we hope that everybody has a great rest of their day. If you want to follow us over on Twitter, it's LO_Red Sox. You can also follow myself on Twitter. It's at Jake Iggy, or also my co-host Lauren. It's la 3 laws, Lauren with 4 R's. But we greatly appreciate everybody making Locked On Red Sox their first listen of every single day. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings his humor, passion, and his unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. So follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. But we'll end this episode how we always end it. Let's go Sox. Peace.